and to please bear with me. So, yeah, so to start off, I think I wanted to just tell you guys a little bit about me personally and some of what I was going through as I went to Thailand a couple years ago. If you remember back then, or if you were here, a couple years ago, I cracked a bunch of jokes about the NBA up here when I was telling you guys that I was going to leave. If you guys don't remember that testimony, it's totally fine. This time around, I don't have any clever basketball jokes, but I do sort of have an analogy that comes from like a pretty interesting sports idea from this last NBA season that I think kind of helps illustrate a life idea. So here we go. You know, in basketball and in other sports and even in life, I think one of the hardest things to find and easiest things to debate about is talent level. Okay, so I think that was pretty evident this last NBA season, which of course I followed in Thailand, when James Harden, our resident Houston Rockets shooting guard with the beard, was seen by most, I think, to be the front runner for the MVP award. So that stands for Most Valuable Player. So it's the award that's usually given to like the most outstanding player from one NBA season. I think it's considered like the most prestigious award for that year. It's pretty hard to get, and those who are able to get it are almost certainly gonna be like Hall of Fame players someday, like some of the best in the game. So anyway, I thought there was one kind of interesting argument by some critics or analysts. They were like against Harden winning the MVP. And it went something like, it's not actually Harden who is the MVP, but rather the system producing the environment for him to do so. So in other words, it's not his skills or his talents or whatever. It's the coaching scheme that's like putting him in a position to do that, or it's like the other players around him that make him look good, or something like that. And that's what making him, it's making him look good. And so that's the reason. So it's not him, not his talents, and that kind of thing. In this light, he is framed as what is often called a system player. And even though this kind of thing produces these like really awesome statistics on paper, and actually led his team to the best record in the NBA, according to these critics, it's still not deserving of MVP, because it was the system, not him. That was like the reason. So although obviously I'm a big Rockets fan, and I think Harden is going to win MVP easily, I'm not going to stand up here and say that the system player argument isn't valid sometimes to use in sports. Actually, I think it very much is. But this year when I heard that argument and I was thinking about it some more, I sort of felt like, what if we applied this argument to our own lives? Like, what if I evaluated myself and looked at what I'm doing now and where I'm at, even like what I believe, and I asked myself, all right, so how much of this was me and my choice or my talents, and how much of it was just my system? It reminded me of maybe how I had felt about my life a few years ago before I went to Thailand, back when I was a Rice undergrad and sort of wanting to go to med school at that time and go down like the doctor track. Just like my dad, sort of, who works in the medical center right now. But in that time, always kind of being bothered by that idea of like, if I followed that track and I did those things, it wouldn't be because of my own abilities that I got there, but really just because I was a product of a system. And like, it set it up for me. It was too easy, almost. In other words, maybe I was just another like Chinese Christian kid who got good grades and like made his way through the system all the way to medicine. And kind of like Harden's haters, I felt like I could look at myself and be like, yeah, you didn't really do anything like special or anything for yourself or decide those things. It was the talent. The talent wasn't there necessarily. It was the system. Maybe you're just a system player too. So I think for me, part of my personal journey started from there. And it's not surprising that soon after that time, I felt like med school wasn't for me. And at the time, it was really hard to swallow. But I decided to drop pre-med my junior year of college. And with my newfound free summer break, I thought maybe it'd be cool to join the summer mission trip to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and see what that was like. Actually, back then, I was leading house church with Cindy Lee, who is now Cindy Lee Chang. And she would always share at that time about how awesome it was out there. So I don't know, I think God provided a way for me to hear about it and to get out there. The summer was great, I loved it, and despite the fact that I didn't know anything about Thailand before going there, other than what I had seen in The Hangover Part 2, I finished my senior year of college and I went back for a couple of years. Here I am now. So, yeah. In these last 2 years, I feel like God has taught me and shown me so much about who I am as a person. In this time of sort of breaking out from my system, I feel like I've grown in confidence in my own talents, abilities, etc. To see that maybe if I work hard at some things, I can actually do them. And not just because there's a nice system around me to help me get there. I guess through things like learning a new language, learning how to teach English and do the finances for our nonprofit school, learning how to play guitar and lead praise in house church, as well as how to just live as a self-functioning adult in the real world, but doing it all overseas. And I feel like I discovered more of basically just like who I am and what I can be through following God. And the ironic thing is that through that process of self-discovery, I have realized with pretty strong conviction that I want to go back and try to be a doctor again. And so my current plan is to go back to Thailand and finish out my 3rd year there. And after that, I think I'll probably come back and try to start the medicine track again. I'll be a little bit older and a bit late to the party, but I think that's okay because I know who I am now and I know I can do it the right way. Like maybe at the end of the day, I am just a system player. And in some ways, maybe all of us kind of are with our different upbringings and families and cultures. I think at the end of the day, you can't get away from that, you know what I mean? And maybe I'm more cut out to play ball a certain way, in my life to go back to medicine. But I think if we embrace who we are and kind of see the big picture of what God's done in getting us where we are, I think it's okay to be an awesome system player. At the end of the day, maybe we'll see in a couple months, you can still win MVP by doing that. And so I guess just for those of you here who maybe have struggled with something like that too, whether or not it's got something to do with satisfaction with your career path or your academic path or even in church, regarding faith and the idea of whether or not our faith is our own. I guess I hope I can encourage you in that. I feel like if I just gone through with trying to go to med school after college, maybe I would have always regretted not having done something like I'm doing now. But the funny thing is that now that I have done that thing, in the end, all I learned is that I want to go back and do that same thing again. So whatever lesson you can take from that, I don't know. But I guess I believe God sets up things in our lives to help us find Him and also find ourselves and who we are too. But He also gives us choice in that process to go where we want, I feel like. So at the end of the day, maybe we're supposed to be system players in some ways. Maybe that's what we're meant to be all along. So this is a little bit about me personally, but I'm also supposed to be up here and talk about missions. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is that, if you didn't know me before this, I guess now you've heard me talk for a bit, and I feel like we can all agree that I'm not really anything special. I'm just a normal dude. And I think one big thing I've learned is that missionaries are normal people too. We're not these superstars of faith that maybe you'd heard about in church growing up or in conferences or seen in videos, I don't know. But we're just like anyone else in the sense that we go through our ups and our downs, our struggles, victories. We sometimes wake up late for work. Occasionally we get lazy. We procrastinate. Sometimes we have issues with coworkers and other drama, etc. At the end of the day, we really are just normal people, normal Christians who God sort of called to do work in building up His kingdom. And that might be cross-culturally or otherwise. In that sense, I think we can kind of flip the script and also say that all Christians are missionaries too, which I do believe in essence, other than technical definition or whatever. But so when it comes to our team, our New Life team in Thailand, it's no different. I joked a couple years ago that me joining our Thailand team was comparable to Kevin Durant joining the Golden State Warriors in terms of its figurative overpoweredness and how it's going to break the league or whatever. In reality, though, our team is great, and I believe God is doing great work through our service, but at the same time, we're just normal people who go through ups and downs. And in my 2 years there, I've seen us go through some really high highs and some really low lows. But at the end of the day, just still faithfully doing God's work. So in terms of what we do practically on a day-by-day basis, if you would like to know, just a real quick intro to that. Our schedules all look a bit different because some of us are in families, some of us are single. But essentially, for those of us that are still learning Thai, many of our mornings were spent in Thai school, while our afternoons, for most of us, are spent teaching English and helping out in other ways at our nonprofit foundation school located in front of Chiang Mai University. It's called The Center. And it's there that we usually initially meet and get to know a lot of our Thai friends who will then eventually invite out to our Friday night house churches, maybe Sunday morning services. Kind of like here, I think. On top of that, we have prayer meetings, logistical planning meetings, all day-to-day stuff, hanging out, different events, whatever. Sometimes discipleship, things like that. That's kind of just a quick look at what we do. In my 2 years out there in Chiang Mai, I honestly think I've already seen a lot of the reality of missions. As in what it really, really looks like on the ground, day to day, and not just what it sounds like it's going to be on the pulpit or the stage, or what it even says in newsletters or videos. And if I were to stand up here and honestly evaluate our team and its performance and effectiveness, I would give us a solid 9.5 out of 10. And although I am really biased and generally a pretty generous critic, that it really is how I think, and honestly what other people have kind of told us in the past too, and I'll explain what I mean. So I think there was a pretty funny thing that happened at the beginning of this year. At that time, I was taking this 5-week training for English teaching. It was called TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, and it was held at the center. Anyway, so in that training, there were a lot of other missionaries in Chiang Mai who were there, so none of whom I had met before, other than one other staff member at the center. I remember during our practicum, which is the English teaching, the practice time, it was held at the local juvenile detention center. On the way there one day, a few of them were asking me all these questions, and they were fascinated with how I had gotten good at Thai so fast, how I spent my time day to day, and how our team does our week-by-week stuff. And it culminated with them saying things like, "Wow, you're a real missionary." To which I was like, "What?" All this to say that, to be honest, the fact that our team is out there in Chiang Mai trying to reach Thai people and help them know Jesus through house church or whatever intentional means, and within our abilities trying to build relationships and learn Thai and learn their culture and meet them where they're at. In my experience, that is a really unique thing amongst the missionaries in Chiang Mai. And in many ways, people view our team as examples of real missionaries. And some people kind of view us as intense too, so it's funny. But this isn't to say that all other missionaries are crap and need to go home. Obviously, that's not true. I'm not saying that I know the whole story. I'm a little biased maybe too, but we don't know the whole story yet, and I think everyone is doing a part in building up God's kingdom. But I guess the point being is that I think our team is doing good work. But like I said previously, we're not perfect. As I said before, we've gone through some big ups and some really big downs. A lot of the downs, I think, have had to do with discouragement and low morale, maybe, which honestly brings me to another funky thing that I have learned about missions. So I feel like when people are trying to get you to sign up for missions, right? Mobilize you or whatever, they oftentimes will stand up here and talk about how we're all called to give, suffer, and die, and we need to go out there, get hit by 100 arrows for the glory of God. And I'm not saying that maybe that's not legit and there's a place for that or whatever. Maybe it's good, it gets people to get out there and do something. But the reality is that, dude, that's not the whole story. And I feel like this was made really obvious to me when I went to the mission field training that I had to go to, that New Life sent me to in Colorado Springs a couple years ago. It's training held by Mission Training International, or MTI. It's about a month long or so. Before I went, I was expecting more of the same, give, suffer, and die, that kind of thing. Get you on fire, whatever. But instead, they were telling us every day things like, hey man, do what you gotta do, but remember to rest well in God. Or things like, think of things to be thankful for every day as you find your fulfillment in Christ. Or consider lowering your expectations to be more in line with incoming reality. Things like this, and etc. And it was an awesome training, honestly, with really, really awesome people. But hearing some of that, I was kind of like, what? Like, I didn't hear that before I came here, you know what I mean? So today, yes, I am breaking kind of a big secret about missions to you guys. And although maybe views on missions differ culture by culture, basically, it's that idea. It's like, hey, work hard, give what you got, suffer a little bit, whatever, be tired, I don't know. But that's not the whole story, because you also gotta not forget to rest and chill, be thankful, and at the end of the day, find your worth in God alone. It's funny because they don't tell you that side of missions until you're in the club, So you're I'm about to go. It's about to go, and they're like, wait, you're gonna burn out. Let me tell you something real quick before you go. So, a big idea from MTI, that training I went to, is the idea that the missionary life is oftentimes a paradox. But I actually think the Christian life is pretty much the same. So in my interpretation of the Bible, so don't come attacking me for this, but I think oftentimes two ideas or two things which seemingly conflict can both be true at the same time. Okay? So one good example of this, I think, is the dueling ideas of following Jesus. So on the one hand, following Jesus is extremely difficult. It's hard. Pick up our cross every day. Get ready to die, right? And it is what it is, whatever. Sorry if it's intense, but you maybe heard that before, right? But Jesus also tells tired and weary people, hey, come to me, find rest. My burden is easy, it's light, it's not hard. And he's like, hey, stop working so hard, Martha. Just sit here like Mary, be like that. And at the same time, I think it's similar to the whole give, suffer, and die, but simultaneous, hey, find rest in God. And you know what? In my Christian walk, I'd say it has definitely been both of those things at once. It's following God and doing what that entails. It's hard. It's not easy every day. But at the same time, I feel like going to God is something that takes away my burdens at the same time, you know what I mean? And gives you a rest that is hard to explain. And I think missions is the same. It's both sides of that. So I think you should know that before you think it's one thing and not the other. So all this to relate back to our Thailand team, which I said previously, I think has struggled a bit these last 2 years with discouragement. Although our church is awesome about supporting us financially, praying for us, and keeping up, we don't have full-time paid personnel whose jobs are literally to keep up with us and make sure we're okay, like all the other big missionary organizations have. So I'd want to just maybe encourage those of you who know our team to help make up for some of that gap. Maybe through keeping in touch, or maybe for praying for us specifically, or just going there via short-term mission trip, which I think our whole team agrees is always the biggest encouragement for us. And recently, in the last 2 years, also no one has signed up for that summer 2-month trip, probably because it says for those thinking about going long-term, and everyone scared by that, right? So I do want to encourage some of you guys though, with free summers, maybe college students, I don't know, to go out and give that a shot too. But at the same time, I think we're also tossing around the idea of having another short-term trip at some point, especially because recently, no one has come out in the summertime. So, just to sum up about our team and some things about missions, we're not perfect. We go through our ups and downs, but not everything is perfect. And in fact, and in the mission field especially too, things are not perfect. Some things are very, very not perfect. And although obviously it can be really discouraging, I think it's just like ministry anywhere. There's this way, it's nothing new because I think local ministries, local churches are the same. They're not perfect either. Honestly, and maybe even house churches, real small, right? And honestly, even in the Bible, the church has had issues since the very beginning. And through it all, God, I think, has been and is still faithful. And he's shown me that through all these imperfections and discouraging things, both here and overseas, he's still bringing about good for his kingdom. And I think it's something that is encouraging. So now I'm going to shift over a little bit and talk about some spiritual things that I personally learned through my time in Thailand. My 2 years there, did, in many ways, pass by really fast. But I also think a lot of things changed in that time too, both for me and for those around me, maybe for you guys. I think the biggest personal change was just that I became more Thai with how I spoke, how I acted, even how I thought and understood certain situations. But I think the biggest biblical lesson, if I had to pick one, that I learned was Matthew 6:33. So that if we seek God's kingdom and His righteousness, that all the other things will be given to us as well. Oh, yeah. Basically, yeah, just that. And before I left, I think there were 3 top things that I was kind of worried about. And so those were finances, being lonely/single, and then future career flexibility. Of course, there were many other things I was worried about too, like Pastor Eric mentioned. What about your parents? I was worried about that too, but unfortunately it didn't crack the top 3, so it is what it is. God definitely broke down those 3 things for me pretty good. And yeah, I think I'll spend the rest of my time here kind of just telling you guys how that happened. So first off, in terms of finances, our team is definitely really blessed since New Life completely funds and supports us financially, which is really unusual for long-term missionaries. By New Life, I guess that means you guys, and some of what you might be giving or tithing to the church every now and then. So thank you for your faithful giving and for making all these things possible for me. I don't know if it's encouraging and or discouraging to see the fruit of that giving, this guy. But yeah, despite that, before heading out to Thailand a couple years ago, there were some worries from me about how I would do financially, both out there and then maybe in the future when I came back here, given the amount that I was making was less than minimum wage comparably and all that stuff. So I think though that pretty soon after that, after I'd lived in Thailand for just a few months, I knew that it wouldn't be anything I'd have to worry about. Most of that process was me learning about the realities of the world and wealth, and just in the sense that things don't cost the same here as they do in Thailand. Maybe to a lot of you that's really obvious, but I feel it was much more real to me when I had lived it out over there. When I would see something for lunch as only 100 baht, Thai baht, which comes out to about $3, and at first talking about how cheap that was, but then over time growing in that and realizing that that's actually more than double the average amount most people were paying for lunch, which I now eat at roughly 40 baht per meal, a bit more than $1. It's also evident in my rent payments. At first, when I started looking for places to live and seeing some pretty nice, 6,000 baht per month places, which comes out to about $200 a month, and thinking about what a bargain that was. And then later realizing most of my friends were paying a third of that amount, about 2,000 baht, about $60. So all this became the realist for me, though, when I had been there a while and I started learning about people's salaries. About a few months into my time in Chiang Mai, I took over Megan Cho's role of doing finance work at the center. So I started paying out the salaries to our Thai workers and also getting to know more friends too. Seeing that a service level job would get you roughly 10,000 baht per month, which comes out to about $300. After getting closer and closer to friends and house church members, talking with them about work, getting more of an understanding of how that thing looks in Thailand, I learned that higher level workers like teachers or something could earn around 15,000 baht per month, which is about $500. The entry corporate jobs for people my age, somewhere 20,000, potentially 30,000 baht or so, about $1,000 a month. Highest level would be for doctors, professors, and pilots, about $60,000 or $70,000 and higher, which just starts to break the plane of a full-time minimum wage job out here in the States. If you did a complete side-by-side comparison, obviously not really a fair thing to do, but yeah. I think in general, I just learned a lot about how the way we think financially is so different, culture by culture. And when I said earlier that I became more Thai, I think this is one of the biggest areas. I feel I saw prices and I saw money in general in more of a Thai way, where now a 100 baht pad Thai was not a cheap $3 anymore, but was instead a way overpriced lunch that could easily be 30 baht and was there for tourists. And I think this process of being more Thai has helped me be more sensitive to the way Thai people think about financial things and anything else too. Through this process, I've also realized how much God has provided for me. It's almost laughable now to think that I was once worried about finances, given how much money I've saved up actually from these 2 years, and how much more I know now about how that comparison works. It wasn't necessarily the way I thought God might provide for me, but I can't deny that God has been more than faithful in blessing me with more than I could have ever needed. So another thing that I was worried about a bit before going was loneliness. So mostly just being worried about whether or not I'd be able to make friends. Since at the time that I left for Thailand, I didn't know anyone there for more than 2 months. The team, right? So I think God answered this for me in some pretty big ways. First off, with another single dude who showed up around the same time 2 years ago and ended up being my roommate for my first year. This goofy Canadian dude named Caleb, who definitely helped me make my first year transition a lot easier and more entertaining. And I feel like at that time, I also didn't realize how rare it was to have had another young, single dude out there staying for a long period of time. Since other than Caleb, I haven't met any other person like that who's like functioning independently doing ministry. So definitely, big praise report that happened the way it did. Another pleasantly surprising area was how close actually I got to a lot of our house church members though. Also with like some of the Thai students at the center. Essentially, nowadays, if I've got a young, single dude friend, he's gonna be a Thai guy. So it's been good making a lot of new Thai friends and even being invited to stay at their houses in other provinces during some of like our holidays and seeing like their traditional way of life too. I think spending a lot of time with them has definitely been the biggest factor in how I improved at Thai quickly, especially with slang, curse words, stuff like that. But also in how my mindset and cultural lens with which I like view the world has changed, to see things more so the way they might see it. And so another aspect of this worry about loneliness was about being single for at least like the next few years or whatever, right? To be honest, this was not like a big worry. I figured I was young, I had time, whatever. And it was something, I gave up to God. It's okay. But it was still kind of there in the back of my head, and I still like couldn't help but think about it every now and then. So it is here and in this situation that I want to stand up and dispel another big myth about missions. And that is the idea that there's all these hot single missionary ladies out there waiting for the single dudes to show up. I think I remember like Pastor Tay back in the day used to throw out some stuff like, "Young men, what are you waiting for? There are 10 single women out there for every one of you." And although in theory, I do think that is true, I'm here to tell you the real truth behind that. So here we go. So let's just stick with this whole like 10 single ladies number, right? If we're going to stick with that idea of 10 single ladies out there for every one single dude, I would say 8 of those girls are going to be at least 10 to 15, if not 20 years older than you already. Like, eliminate 80% right there. All right, remaining 2 girls, right? One of those 2 girls is for sure going to be hashtag single for life, hashtag don't need no man. And if you're down to try and like deal with that, that's up to you. And then, for the last girl, more than likely, she will have grown up either homeschooled, in Bible school, Bible college her whole life, which I'm not saying I have anything against, just the reality. Really different from like a guy like me, right? So actually, while I'm on that subject, just so you know, actually, as a matter of fact, the majority of long-term missionaries I think that you'll meet, they will have grown up in like some sort of environment like that, where they didn't ever really go to like public school or those kinds of things. So I don't know. So, some guys end up finding a girl within those 10, but I knew pretty quick, like, it ain't happening for me. So, but it was in that scenario that God showed up in a way that I didn't think was possible. Because long story short, there was this girl I knew from college. Her name was Michelle Lowe. She's like, "Hey, Daniel, I'm just gonna stop by Thailand." I was like, "Why?" "Oh, just to visit." "Okay." She came for a week, we hung out, we caught up. Next thing you know, we were DTRing and we were dating. Boom. So, so somehow in that first year of Thailand, that happened. And Hung Chu, one of my leaders, as she says it, she says, "Daniel, you found yourself a sugar mama." And But the truth is, I didn't find myself just any sugar mama. She was a girl willing to wait for me, be long distance for at least 2 years, and put up with me too, and also happened to be like one of my best friends already. And given that, just sitting down thinking about that, it was in that realization that I thought, man, God is real. You know what I mean? But jokes aside, like, yeah, I mean, obviously that has been one of the biggest like miracles in my time in Thailand. And currently, we're on our like second time period of getting to see each other in this year. It's been nice. Might be a little worse after today, but you know, it's all good. So yeah, I guess real quick, the last thing about those worries that I wanted to share about was this whole like life path, career path efficiency kind of idea, which, like I said before about the whole system thing, James Harden, it's a small obstacle, I think, now in the eyes of God. What I mean by this thing, though, is that like the idea that like if you do something that doesn't eventually relate to your future career or somehow not productive in some way, that you lost, you wasted time, you're behind, you know, behind like other people. I just feel like now it's just really not true. It's like once you get into the real world, meet more people and stuff. But I guess when I was at Rice, I oftentimes did feel that pressure, you know. And now, yeah, I'm more committed than ever to try and go back to med school, and I don't feel like I'll really be behind in any major way, or at least nothing that God couldn't help me get through. But I guess this is also the part where I encourage some of you younger guys, or younger girls, who maybe do feel like missions is something you want to experience, like for real, and you're wondering, how do I do that? And so here I am to tell you, like, dude, this team and this church, I think is a golden opportunity. Like, in some ways, almost too good to be true. And like, you know, even doing something as big as like going for a couple years is something that you absolutely won't regret or like lose time in life on or whatever. Because I don't know, for me, if there's anything that God has shown me in these last 2 years, it really is that if we seek Him first, that He'll provide for everything else. So, I think in a 35-minute nutshell, that is what I've got to say. God is, yeah, definitely at work in Chiang Mai, Thailand, just as He obviously is here in Houston too. You know, I haven't been here in 2 years, and I'm sure like a lot of like stuff has gone down or whatever. But just being here and like, you know, experiencing corporate worship again, seeing all you guys, all the familiar faces and like the unfamiliar faces, all the house churches on the list now, like 78. I think it goes to show how much God has done. Maybe like you don't see it, you know, day by day, week by week, it's the same thing, right? But like you go for 2 years, you come back, you're like, dude, it's so different, you know? And like, I just want to close though, no, I don't want to close yet. Not just in us as a church body that changed, yes, but also in us personally. Like He was in me for the last 2 years, and I feel like He has probably been for you guys too. Like I'm up here sharing like what I did the last 2 years, but I feel like anybody could do that, you know what I mean? Just talk about what you went through the last 2 years, So I do want to close by saying thank you to all of you again for your prayers, your support, and your encouragements that you give to us. Honestly, we could not be doing it without you, and I'm not saying that just because you give us money. I also do want to ask you guys, though, to keep praying for our team, for Eric and Hung and their kids, 4 kids, Ethan, Caleb, Simeon, and Lana, for David and Jiang and their kids, Lillian and Zadok, and then for Elizabeth Park and me too, singles on the team. Especially in this next year, which I think will be a pretty big one for us, because actually it's going to be the 8th year for our team. So after this year, everyone's term is ending. So just pray for us to have wisdom about what to do, about what our next steps will be going into the future for us as a team, you know, maybe as a church, and on a personal level too, like what we're going to do. So thanks so much again for listening to me talk about all this random stuff. And I hope God shows all of you how real He is, just as He has done for me. So thank you.